What was your scariest, I need to leave now, gut feeling moment? Just happened to me. I was in Las Vegas for a work event and went to take an elevator up to my room on the 44th floor. When I got on, there was already one man who had pushed floor 27. As the doors were closing, two guys shouted, "Hold the doors!" from the hall. But the man who was in the elevator with me was pushing the door closed button. The two guys from outside the elevator managed to stick their arm between the doors at the perfect moment to open the doors back up and get on. The two men who just got on pushed floor 32. As we went up, the doors at floor 27 opened, but the first man didn't get off. This was the floor he had chosen before I even got on. The elevator stopped at floor 30, and one person got on and pushed the button to floor 40. Floor 32 came, the doors opened, and the two men asking to hold the doors got off. Meanwhile, the first man is still on the elevator. He kept looking at me and I just got this bizarre feeling. He wouldn't stop staring at me even when I was giving him mean looks. So when floor 40 opened, I got off with the person who pushed that floor's button. I was pretty freaked out at this point, so I actually went to the lobby and got a hotel worker to take me up to my floor. This whole deal was probably another 10 minutes when I finally reached my floor with the hotel worker. We took a hall that curved, and once we rounded that curve, I saw that man who was originally in the elevator with me that was staring. Looked like he was just pacing the hallways. I told the hotel worker that was the man who I was concerned over, and they called security to come get him while the hotel worker and I went back down to the lobby and waited till it was clear. I'm not sure of anyone's malicious intentions in this situation, but I was not going to F around and find out as a younger petite woman. Next story. I was on a small Horizon Airlines flight, sitting on the window of one of those small flights that are just 2 seats per row. After I get settled, an older guy sits next to me. The entire flight we don't say a word, but he does give me a funny look when I ask for a beer to drink. We land. Folks start deplaning. It's one of those small flights in airports where you can exit from both the front and the back. Folks around us start shuffling off. This dude is just sitting there, looking straight ahead, doesn't move a muscle. At first, I just assume he doesn't know our exit is behind us. I lightly tap him on the shoulder, politely tell him we can go. The dude turns to look at me with the most intense face and quietly says, "I don't converse with liars." I don't know what it was, maybe his low but intense tone. Girl instinct kicked in and all the hairs stood up on my arm. I realized that it was pinned in by this guy. He is too big to get around. Fewer and fewer people are on the plane. This guy is just radiating this intense, mean aura. I tried to press the attendant call light, but it was too loud for anyone to hear. Finally, this nice man caught my eye and basically forced this guy to let me up. I don't know what happened to him because I literally ran through to the pickup point, but I'll never forget the feeling helpless and trapped in those 5 to 10 minutes. Next story. I've posted this before, but this applies here. My brother and I always got to spend a Friday night at my grandmother's house. Looked forward to it every week. She lived closer to town, and I had friends in the neighborhood. We'd all play baseball and hide and go seek, so Grandma's house was where we always wanted to be. One night after supper, and my parents were getting ready to leave, I just had this strange feeling and asked my mom if I could go home that night. I have no idea why I wanted to go home. It was summertime. I got to eat chips and watch TV with my mom and dad before going to bed. My bedroom shared a wall with the living room. I heard my mom saying my dad's name rather frantically. I got out of bed to see what was going on. My dad was sleeping on the couch and snoring really loud. My mom couldn't wake him up. She yelled at me to go back to bed, but I did not do that. I went to their bedroom to use the phone and called 911. Moved the call to the living room so they could talk to my mom. I sat on the floor holding my dad's hand and kept telling him that I loved him. Ambulance arrives with my grandparents following behind it. It turns out my dad took a lot of pills. The doctor told my mom that if I didn't call 911 when I did, my dad would not have been all right. All because my gut was telling me to go home for that night instead of a fun-filled night with my nanny and Gramps. Next story. I posted this a long time ago, but I'll retell the story. So I was hiking around in some woods in suburban Dallas before I moved out here to California about a decade ago. Oak Point Park it's called in Plano. And I was just walking around, catching lizards, looking for snakes, and smoking weed. So I hear a cat start meowing when it was getting pretty late. About 7:30 in the summer. I was thinking if I found the cat, I might get a reward. I've done that before. So I start looking, and it's just right out of where I can directionally hear it, so I know it's close. Then I give up because I just couldn't find it. I stop to pee, and I hear it really loud. And I look across this clearing, and there was some raggedy-looking dude, and right when I made eye contact with him, he meowed at me, and I effing dipped out. Oh, dude, that one gives me chills. Gross. Next story. I was driving home alone from a college party to the apartment I shared with my then-boyfriend at 2 a.m. The car I had was crappy and couldn't handle the freeway, so I was taking a roundabout route home. It was maybe a 45-minute drive. I noticed shortly after I left the party that someone was following me turn for turn. It was very apparent they were following me specifically after I took many turns and we were nearing my apartment. I didn't want whoever was following me knowing where I lived, so I tried to lose them. It didn't work. Instead, I decided to pull into the cop station that was a couple of blocks from my apartment. They were well lit and open. The dude following me drove away very quickly, and I had a cop follow me all the way back home to make sure I made it back in one piece. I don't know why they were following me, but the fact they'd been following me since I left campus meant they probably didn't have any good intentions. Next story. I lived in an off-campus apartment and often had to walk late at night from work or the library, since the bus didn't go past my apartment. I was walking home late one night and passed two guys walking in the other direction. Shortly afterwards, I had to cross the train tracks, and there was fencing on the sidewalk that sort of forced you to go in this zigzag pattern. So I saw behind me, and I saw that these same guys had turned around and were now following me. I tried to tell myself that it probably had nothing to do with me and maybe they had forgotten something at home and had to go back, but something just felt off. There weren't many options to get away, since it was a stretch of road without a lot on it. I did go across the street into a well-lit parking lot and crossed it diagonally as if I was heading towards the neighborhood behind it. I sort of hid behind this building, out of their line of sight, and as I rounded the building carefully on the other side, I saw them walking towards where I would have appeared to be headed. I speed-walked the next 10 minutes home in a different direction, looking behind me constantly, and got home without any further issues. I still don't know their intentions or whether it was just a coincidence, but I'm glad I followed my gut and was careful. There are far too many stories of women being attacked on or around campus at night. Next story. During college, I'd procrastinated and had a paper due in the morning that I had barely started. When I would do this to myself, my typical remedy would be to head to the library and pull an all-nighter. It was maybe a 10-minute walk from my house just off campus, so I'm making decent progress as the night goes on, but I'm just feeling mentally burnt out and my gut is telling me I'll be more productive if I get a few hours sleep. The library started to feel uncomfortable for some reason. I packed up and left, walked home, and as I'm stepping out into the back porch to smoke a J before bed, I hear a not too distant pop, pop, pop sound. As my phone began to blow up a few moments later, I found out that quick pop, pop, pop was the school police taking down a school shooter. Shortly after I'd left, he had walked into the library, shooting and paralyzing one student just outside, a hero who managed to call 911 before passing out, and shooting a few others inside before going outside for self-unaliving by the cop. Campus was a wreck for a few days. Many other times I had stayed through the night, often popping outside for a quick break in the same area where the first student was shot. So, I guess it may not count as scariest in the moment, since it was just a tired feeling and gut feeling of needing to lie down for a while, rather than imminent danger, but thought I'd share. Next story. I got into an Uber. He had his hood up, didn't look at me, and didn't say a word. As soon as my door closed, he took off. He asked me where I lived and how to get there. I told him to follow Uber Maps. He asked again. He was driving erratically and running stop signs, so I told him to turn onto the street we were riding parallel to. He passed multiple turns, blatantly ignoring me. He asked me if I had a music preference, and I said no. He picked a song and turned the volume to max, not just a little loud, all the way up. He opened his console and reached in, sprayed cologne all over himself, then offered me some gum, taking a piece for himself. I politely declined. He started reaching all around the backseat, saying he dropped his piece. Yeah, I never saw him drop anything. This song is blaring, and the lyrics are saying, "Is there anyone out there? 'Cause it's getting harder and harder to breathe." Mind you, he picked this song, it was not the radio. There was a UPS truck blocking the one-way street. Knowing this may be my only chance to exit the vehicle, I quietly unbuckled with one hand and the other was on the door handle. As we approached and he was forced to slow down to a stop, I dipped and speed walked the other way. It really felt like he was getting ready for something. To rob me, SA me, traffic me, kill me, I don't know. But I had a horrible feeling. Was the music maxed out so nobody could hear me? I have never in my life heard my gut so loud, repeating over and over, "Get out." Next story. Just after Thanksgiving, friend and I were driving up a mountain on a narrow gravel road to hike to a peaceful and stunning overlook. We got stuck behind a powder blue rusty 90s Ford truck going a little faster than idle speed and began to get frustrated. We rounded a turn and saw there was a small old dog running alongside the truck. The truck stops, opens the driver's side door, and the dog hops in. We both then felt bad for thinking bad things about the driver. He must have just been looking for this dog. The truck starts up again, and after several hundred feet, the truck pulls over to the left side to allow us to pass. As we pass, the driver is an older man with missing teeth, dead eyes, and straggled hair. We locked eyes in slow motion, and he had the most evil, hateful look on his face. A shiver went down my spine, and the hair went up on my neck. I joked with my friend to break the tension in the car. Well, that's not terrifying. He definitely would have killed us. We enjoy a lot of dark humor. I look in the rearview mirror and he's still watching us. He has an 8-point deer skull tied to the front bumper. We shook it off and didn't think much of it after that. In the South, you get all sorts of folk around these mountains. We get to the small parking area and hiked the short distance to our spot. To my knowledge, the way we took was the only trail available to get to the overlook. We arrived, excited, we had the place completely to ourselves and enjoyed the view. We were glad we chose the smaller public mountain overlook than the much larger but more crowded one further up the mountain. We talked and reminisced old memories, traded war stories about jobs. It was the perfect afternoon before she had to fly back home. We had been there for about 20 minutes when suddenly we heard a jingle coming toward us. It was the old dog, about 50 feet away. Then we see the shadow of that man barreling toward us, behind the dog from a different direction than the path we took. We both shoot up from our spots, and after exchanging a look, my friend says, "We need to get the F out of here." She starts running back up the path we took, and I'm right behind her. It was hard to hear from the crunch of leaves, but we both agreed. He said, "Hey, get the hell back here." I looked back, and the dog was at his side. He was not yelling at the dog. There were his hateful dead eyes again. Realizing we weren't going to be polite and stick around, we'll never know what the heck that man wanted, but we both felt that internal panic that every woman knows. I've never been back to that spot again, but I'll be sure when I do, I'm not alone. Next story. I went to Nashville for a concert with a friend. We got into a taxi, this was right before Uber took off, and directed the driver to our motel. For a while, he just made small talk, very friendly guy. He was one of those people that come off a little lonely and a little socially awkward. The hotel was about 30 minutes away. He was sort of exhausting, and I was already looking forward to being out of the car. About 10 minutes in, he says, "Motel 6, huh? I heard they had bed bugs." I actually had checked recent reviews because this is one of my fears. So I said that. He said, "Oh, no, they probably still do," and keeps really pushing the point. I said I knew how to check for them if they do, and we'll move. He says, "Well, why don't you girls just stay with me and my wife?" And he goes on about how much better and comfier and safer it would be. In the South, you do have people who would totally offer this, be sane and okay. He was a bit older, so at first I just thought he was a bit behind on the times. But then he kept pressing the point and making us uncomfortable. He finally said, "Nothing would happen to you." I got chills. I said our friend and her boyfriend were expecting us at the motel. I said, "In fact, that reminds me, I need to call and see if they're there so we will know if we need to get the room key from the office." Those friends didn't exist, so I called my mom and asked her a question that is code for, "I'm in trouble," and she played along until he was convinced. I think if we'd gone with him, we'd have never been heard from again. Or at best, we'd have woken up somewhere violated. Next story. I was a little kid living in a low-income, crappy apartment complex. I was walking home from the store one day with my kid sister and noticed a weird guy following us, like 6 feet behind. I started weaving through the apartment buildings and he followed. We were freaked the F out and I told my kid sister that we absolutely couldn't go to the building we actually lived in because he'd know where we lived. We hauled butt to the apartment manager's office and told the woman inside we were being followed. They let us inside the bathroom and called the cops. Unexpected from low-income housing, but the woman inside had kids, so she took it seriously. The cops came and took down our description of the guy, but they didn't look for him immediately. The lady let us stay until our folks got back from work. A week later, we saw cops and the dude got taken away in handcuffs on our way home from school. I guess he also lived in the complex and was beating his own children. I don't know if anything was happening to us, but it was the 90s and stranger danger was still shoved on kids where I lived, so he triggered my fight or flight. I'm very grateful the lady in the office believed us. Some scary stuff. Next story. Went to a park near my house with the intention of smoking a joint. There was this big empty stretch of grass sandwiched between a playground and a soccer field. I was getting ready to spark up when I see a disheveled-looking white guy slumped over in front of the public bathroom. I think nothing of it. Sometimes there's junkies at the park. I'm about to take the pre-roll out of my pocket. Then I get this weird, "I need to leave now" feeling. I look back. The dude is stumbling to his feet and starts screaming in gibberish. He starts running at me and yells, "You female dog with the red hair!" I had just dyed my hair and there was nobody else around, so I booked it and started running towards the soccer field where some kids were playing. I approached this random middle-aged woman who was walking in the direction of the crazy dude. I tell her, "Hey, that dude is unstable, don't go there." And she immediately turns around and walks with me. She says to me, "My son's soccer practice is about to end. You can stay with me until he goes away." The kids start walking off the field and getting into their parents' cars. Then the crazy dude emerges from the bushes and is screaming some more gibberish about 9/11 and how the city is being dirtied by brown people. Almost everyone at this park is Indian or Middle Eastern. Everyone is understandably put off by this. This crazy dude picks up a rock and throws it at someone walking by. Luckily, didn't hit them. Then out of nowhere, this dude throws himself on the hood of a car that is leaving the area. The dad in the car with his 2 kids revs the engine and turns on the windshield wipers. The crazy dude falls on the sidewalk and they drive away. At some point during the chaos, people finally called 911 and several cop cars showed up within minutes. At this point, I decided to go home. Later, I checked the Nextdoor app, and it turns out that this man was reportedly involved in a heated confrontation at a nearby McDonald's and flashed a handgun at every other person. When the police were called, he made a run for it and ended up at the park. He was arrested there, and they found the loaded handgun and several magazines of ammo in his backpack. Could have easily been a mass shooting situation based on the way he was acting. Too long, didn't read, went to the park to smoke, got yelled at and chased by a tweaker who was harassing others in the area, jumped on a guy's car, threw rocks at people, and ended up having a gun the whole time. Next story. This guy my age used to come into work regularly. He would chat with me and my coworker and was very friendly. We ended up exchanging numbers and going out to the same bar one night. He was a large guy, tall and just generally big. It was getting late and he wanted to leave. I did not want to go home with him as I saw him as a friend. The bar was so busy, full of people. He grabbed my wrist and tried to lead me through the crowd out the doors. I tried to pull away several times to go find my friend and just to get away. I told him I need to go find my friends, tried to tell him I need to go to the bathroom. He insisted that we go and would squeeze even tighter. I got a horrible gut feeling and I knew that I needed to get away from him. Thankfully, we were in a very crowded place, so I kept continually pulling my hand away and finally got my wrist loose. I saw my friend and we went into the bathroom. I told her we needed to leave. I don't know why, but I just got this horrible feeling that I had to get out of there and couldn't forget the grip he had on my wrist. He was standing by the door waiting for me, but her and I snuck through people and ran away. We were staying in a hotel nearby for a friend's birthday and we ran the entire way there. Next story. My friend and I were traveling Europe and she was single, so we met up with a few people on her Tinder to show us around the place. We'd met 2 guys already who had given us tours, so everything had been going fine. It was getting kind of late and she wanted to meet one guy who was very attractive, but I wanted to go home. I didn't want to spoil her excitement, so despite not wanting to, I told her I didn't mind. We met him in a crowded bar, but he had brought along a friend who was much older than us, and he also looked nothing like his pictures. They tried to buy us drinks and insisted they ordered them instead of us getting the drink directly. We said no, and they basically ushered us out of the bar to go to their preferred bar, and he dapped up the bouncer while going in. I've never felt so uneasy seeing someone interact with a bouncer like that. Something about the situation said he could do whatever he wanted and get away with it because he was the king here and he knew it. I knew if I didn't do something then, something really bad would have happened to us. I didn't know what else to do, so I pretended to have a psychotic breakdown outside the bar. I learned one of the few things a cocky man fears is an unstable woman. He tried to calm me down, and anytime he stood near me, I screamed at him like I was a maniac. He went from confident to terrified pretty dang quick, and my friend said she was going to take me away for a few minutes to a less busy street to calm me down, and we'd come back. He started following us as we walked down the street and we both ran back to our accommodation. Thankfully, she was just as scared as I was and was incredibly grateful I was able to think fast like that. Still gives me the shivers when I think of it. Next story. I was out hunting with my son. He was 10 at the time, and we were walking an old logging road to a cut block in a pretty overgrown area. We got to the trail leading to the cut block and started in. We got about 30 yards when I stopped dead in my tracks. I didn't think to stop, my body just did it on its own. I had my hand on my kid's chest, my hair was standing on end, and I'm trying to figure out what was going on. This all happened in a split second. My instincts were screaming, run. That's when I looked up, and I saw the butt end of a grizzly with last year's cub about 10 feet to the right of the underbrush. The air that was in my lungs decided to leave, making a noise, and it spooked the both of them. They exploded through the bush away from me, spun the kid around, and hightailed it out of there. Got back to the truck, and the kid said, "Thought we were going hunting." He hadn't noticed what happened or saw anything, completely oblivious. On the drive home, I think I realized I smelled the bear. If you've been around them, they have a very distinct smell, and my caveman brain kicked in. Not the last time I walked in on a grizzly, but the closest call I've ever had. If she had seen us first, it would have been over before I could have done anything. Still get the shiver thinking about how close that one was. Next story. I was around 12 when this happened, but I was lost in a Walmart looking for my brother when this older guy, about 50 to 60, was following me. I noticed and tried not to look nervous. I was walking faster and he sped up with me. I moved to a different aisle to try to lose him, but he was still following me. That's when I bumped into an employee stocking inventory and saw my brother. Shortly after that, we left. I don't know what he would have done if he had gotten me or why he was following me, but I am grateful my brother found me when he did. Next story. When my mom failed to strangle me when I was 16, it was the first time in my life I ever actually swore at her, and she lunged at me and put her hands around my throat and pushed me down with all her weight on the couch. My stepdad, brother, and aunt all watched as I started to lose consciousness. To be fair, my brother and aunt were younger than me and screaming and crying for her to stop. I managed to kick her off of me when my stepdad finally began to pull her off. I scaled a couch and ran to get my phone from my room, and they both beat me over the head as I'm trying to escape the house, and they're trying to pry my phone out of my hands. My exit was blocked, and I knew they wanted the phone, and as soon as I let go, I ran to the balcony and jumped off the second floor onto some grass and ran to my neighbor's house. I had never talked to them, but please just let me inside. My mother's trying to hurt me. They let me in, and I found out that day that calling the cops is never a good idea, even if you're in trouble. My mom got to the police first and told them a very fake story that my stepdad backed up, and she coerced my brother to lie as well. They made me beg her to let me stay and not be brought to juvie. My whole life she fed me stories about how much worse it would be there or being in the system, and to never ever talk to the cops or CPS. I left home very soon after, and am not the same 20 years later. I'll never forget that feeling of I have to leave or I will die, and have severe anxiety issues. Her abuse definitely led me down a path to more abuse as well as an adult. There's a lot of trauma surrounding this event. Next story. I worked in a small tourist town one summer in the 90s, and there were always a lot of different people passing through. Military groups, temporary staff, etc. But a group of 3 guys in particular gave me the serious creeps. It was near the end of the summer season, and we went out on a quiet weeknight for a few goodbye drinks with some friends who were leaving to return to school. The group got pared down to myself, 2 female coworkers, Cindy and Mindy, who were leaving out, and Rob, who Mindy was casually dating. We had been hanging out at a pub and decided to head out to another bar, as some friends had said they might be there. We get there, and the place is very empty. Maybe 2 to 3 other tables and no sign of our friends, but we decide to just have one more drink. We sit at a table that is tucked away and are just chatting over our drinks when a table of 3 guys move to the table next to us. The one guy keeps trying to aggressively strike up a conversation, making some dumb and rude comments, negging lightly. We are not interested, so I just give one-word answers and focus on my friends. Not rude, just not interested. At one point, he starts getting all upset and belligerent as to why we won't chat with them. And I tell him, look, no one here is interested in hanging out with or chatting with you guys. We are having a last visit. Please leave us alone. And he gets right irate and starts on about how he is just trying to be friendly and people go out to the bars to meet new people and what's my problem? I tell him my problem is that he won't take a hint nor politely being told that we do not want to hang out, and if he could just F off at this point. He calls me a rude female dog and moves with his buddies to a table in a different section of the bar, so we don't see them again. About an hour later, Cindy and I decide to head out, say our goodbyes to Mindy and Rob, and start walking home. Neither of us were intoxicated, as we each had about 4 to 5 beers in like 4 hours. And I get this strong, urgent gut feeling that we need to hurry. So I grab Cindy's hand and I say, let's run home. I bet we can make it the whole way without stopping. Cindy was a jogger and thought that was a great funny idea. So we held hands and ran all the way to our accommodation. Cindy and Mindy headed back to school, and 2 days later, a police officer showed up where I work. On that night we went out. A woman was essayed near the bar we were at by men matching the description of the ones who came and sat next to us. The bartender kind of knew Rob, and the police tracked him down for a statement, and he was able to tell them where I worked. This was pre-cell phone, so it took a few days to find the witnesses. Apparently, these guys left right after Cindy and I, so who knows if they were looking for us or trying to follow us. But because my brain was screaming run, we were long gone. Next story. When I was in college, my friend and I went to get our hair done at a salon an hour away, and then we planned to see where the day or night took us. The guy doing my hair was very talkative, and I could tell my friend liked him. He asked what we had planned for the day, and we shared we were just going where the wind blows. He says that he has a large lizard in the back room of the salon and invites us to come back to the salon to hang out after business hours. We say sure, and go back to the salon at around 7 p.m. Mind you, this guy was very chill, and he didn't make either my friend or me uncomfortable at this point. We get to the salon and we start drinking, shooting the breeze. We brought our own alcohol. He keeps asking if we want any of his alcohol, and we say no. He fixes us cups anyways, but he prepares them at the counter with his back facing us. I thought this was all odd because he took his alcohol with him to the counter when we were on the couches with a large table that had all the stuff needed already in front of us. We didn't touch the cups. He then asks if we're okay with him inviting a friend. We say sure. Friend gets there and he's not as talkative. Salon owner asks if we like to smoke. At the time I did, here and there, but my friend didn't at all. We go out to the front of the salon, the four of us chatting it up, and the salon owner and I are passing a joint. My friend and salon owner are having a better conversation than me and his friend. I keep asking him questions to learn more about him, but he's just stiff, giving 1 to 3 word answers, until he asked me if I liked to dance. Finally, something for us to connect on. He invites us to a club, and I look at my friend to get a pulse check. But when I look at her, I notice the salon owner making eye contact with his friend behind me, and the salon owner nods. He was smiling when he and my friend were talking, but when she turned to look at me and he made eye contact with his friend, his face dropped instantly. It set off all these alarms in my gut immediately. Maybe 2 to 5 minutes later, a black SUV pulls up. Tinted windows. Salon owner gets up and goes to the car. I can't hear what he's saying, but he points at us, nodding his head, and he starts laughing, dapping up the people inside. It was so dark in the SUV that we couldn't see who was inside, but he comes back and says that they'll give us a ride to the club. I say no immediately, that we brought a car. The thing that sealed the deal for me was I asked his friend when the club closed. He said it doesn't. I asked where the club was. He said, we'll just take you. I asked the salon owner where the club was. He said, we'll just show you. I was like, okay, heck no. What kind of sketchy answers are these? I tapped my friend saying, I want to leave. She's upset, but she says okay. As we walk to the car and get further from the salon, the air feels lighter. I'm suddenly less anxious. I turn around, and both guys are just standing on the curb staring at us. My friend was upset at me, saying there was no reason to leave, that I'm freaked out for no reason. She really liked the guy. I start to think about it some more, trying to put the pieces together, and based on the conversations and subtle actions throughout the night, I just had a strong feeling that if we went to the club with them, something bad would have happened to us. Also, my friend and I were 22 at the time, and these guys were probably in their late 30s. I have another story that made me feel scared if anyone else is interested. Next story. I invited a guy over I'd only just started seeing for a drink, and my usually over-friendly dog snarled at him and wet herself when he walked in. When she didn't stop, I told him a friend had just texted saying she needed help with something, and I bailed. When I drove home later that night, he was still sitting in his car 2 houses down from my place, watching my house. You know, it's fine for people to go back and forth and question our own instincts sometimes. I mean, not actually, I'm being sarcastic, but I would never question a dog's. Okay, if my dog doesn't like you, I'm sorry, even if I think you're fantastic. He's kind of the last say. Good on you, Poochie. We trust you. We're grateful. Oh man, I love dogs. Next story. My friend had dragged me to a club that I didn't want to go to. After a while, I saw a group of guys come in badly concealing guns and looking like they had eaten week-old crab. So I told my friends we needed to go and went straight for the exit. I was about 3 blocks away when I realized they hadn't followed me out, so I said, it's too late for them now. About 4 minutes later, I saw people running. My friend started to run past me but stopped and said, how'd you get here so fast? I said, I told you we needed to go. And one of them said, I told everyone you were going to the bathroom. What? Next story. This was a few years ago. I had just finished a day of kayaking at Lake Pillsbury in Northern California. I'm driving my two-seater truck back into town when I come across three young men. It was a nice day, so I'm driving with my window down when one of them called out to me saying they had been walking for days and requesting a ride. The lake I was leaving is accessed by a long, winding, narrow dirt road in the mountains, basically in the middle of nowhere. It was a weekday afternoon, so no one really was around, and it didn't look like these guys had any water with them. I instructed them to hop in the bed of the truck, and I'll drive them into town. It took about 5 minutes before the pit in my stomach started to develop. Here I am, in the middle of nowhere, outnumbered 3-1, and I'm suddenly having this feeling of dread. I'm watching them in the rear view as I drive, and they are talking amongst themselves and glancing my way. Now, luckily for me, as I mentioned before, the dirt was kind of windy and winding. I speed up a bit to keep them off balance and keep an eye on them as best as I could. It took about 20 minutes before the gut feeling finally started to dissipate. It took about 45 minutes until I was able to drop them off at a corner store in Potter Valley, where they offered me some cash. I declined and went about my day. When I get home, I'm cleaning up my gear from the day. As I'm in the bed of the truck, I find a bullet rolling around. I'm not sure what their intentions were, but they couldn't have been good. Next story. I was on a solo drive on a non-busy scenic parkway that has a lot of historic, picnicking, bathroom stops, the works, and I stopped at the bathroom to pee. There was a small old building that had bathrooms split by a corridor, which had pamphlets and brochures for various local businesses. Those bathrooms were closed, but there was a trailer-like temporary-looking bathroom structure placed to the side of the building to address this. On further inspection, I saw that the door of this bathroom did not lock. Furthermore, the toilet was about 10 feet from the door in this needlessly spacious bathroom, so holding the door shut was not remotely possible. I did a small sweep of the grounds and noted that the only person there was an old man who appeared engrossed in the pamphlets. I felt confident that I could pee fast enough to avoid anyone walking in on me. I swiftly walked to the bathroom. I had my belt unbuckled before I went in, shorts and undies down on the walk between the doors and the toilet, forcefully emptied my bladder like it was an Olympic sport, skipped the wiping, and just buttoned my shorts when the old man opened the door. He didn't apologize and close the door, he just stood there and stared at me as I was finished buckling my belt. I had all kinds of sirens blaring in my head at this point, and I'm not sure how I stayed so calm, but I just started making friendly small talk. So I slipped by and got the F out of there. Logistically speaking, based on where he was and how fast I was, he would have to have known that I was in there. He must have been moving towards the bathroom as soon as I shut the door. All indications pointed to him hanging out at this stop and watching a bathroom that he knew didn't lock, and possibly caused it not to lock, so that he could intrude on people in the middle of their business, at best. Ugh. Next story. Walking to my now wife's place in East London in the early 2000s. Sunday afternoon was eerily quiet. I passed under a sky crane that looked like it was being raised to a higher level. I remember thinking that if that collapsed on a busy day, there would be carnage. I booted it to my partner's place and sat down to watch an old black and white movie. Across the bottom of the TV screen, a news flash came across. The crane I had walked under had collapsed, killing 3 people. To this day, it still freaks me out. Next story. I was in Vegas with one of my friends and called an Uber, leaving Paris and going to park. The Uber pickup area for Paris is awful. In the parking garage without a lot of people around, so I already felt a bit on edge. During the ride, I quickly noticed the driver wasn't following the GPS. It would tell him to turn left and he would put that turn signal on, then switch to right at the last moment and go the opposite direction. This happened to my wife actually when she was on a vacation to Palawan with another friend. I was dating her at the time. She enjoyed traveling to island resorts, and there was a good deal on Palawan, so she decided to take her girlfriend with her. I don't know much about the Philippines, but I did read about some issues with safety in Palawan, so I warned her about safety when traveling. My wife's petite, while her friend is pretty big and athletically built, so we didn't think it'd be too much of a problem. Initially, she loved it there. The locals were really friendly, the food was good, and the beaches were fine. but there were a few incidents that seriously creeped her out. At the resort swimming pool, there was a group of Japanese guys who kept catcalling her when she was out swimming, and they kept insisting that she joins them later in their hotel room. When she rejected their offer, they kept getting more insistent and followed her. So she quickly walked towards the hotel staff and then straight into the lobby restroom until her friend came by to help her. But the real creepy thing was when a young male hotel staff stalked her. He was initially friendly, but started talking a bit too intimately about her. And even when she insisted that she had a boyfriend, he kept trying to talk with her, saying things like, "I end work at blank PM. We should grab drinks after. I'll come by your hotel room." She said no thanks and proceeded to run straight to her hotel room. After a few minutes, there were persistent knocks on the door. My wife woke up late, so her friend was out on a cave tour. She frantically called me and asked what she should do. I told her to immediately call the lobby and report the harassment, which she proceeded to do. That was when the knocking stopped. She later found out that the guy wasn't even a hotel staff. Her flight was the next day, so she didn't follow up on this incident and went straight to the airport after. Next story. A couple years ago, my kids were at school. We had a threat for severe weather that day, but that's somewhat common for our area. I had the midday news on at home like I usually do, and it was saying we were probably going to have heavy rain at pickup time. Our streets flood easily, so I decided to go pick up my kids early. Got the first kid from the elementary, and then pulling up to the middle school, the sky was a weird black and green color. I was starting to feel uneasy. We got home. I turned back on the news just in time for them to say, "Take cover." Then the power went out. An EF3 went through our neighborhood, ripped roofs off houses, collapsed a wall at the elementary school. I still can't believe I got my kids just in time. Next story. When I was around 12, I was staying at a large hotel, and the ice machine was on a different floor. So I went down to get the ice, and I went down a floor and I couldn't find it. So I walked back to the elevator. As I got in, this group of older teenage boys got in too. And although they didn't say anything to me, I knew I was in danger. And I raised the ice bucket immediately to let them know I would hit them if they got near. The one guy immediately started saying, I was just joking. And then the door opened and I booked it to my room. The thing was, I never actually heard them talking about me. I just knew something was wrong and I reacted instinctively. I still wonder what he had even said, to be honest. Next story. Myanmar national here. I'm less likely to be conscripted since I'm a woman, but one of my same-aged male relatives got a notice to report to the administrative office for the conscription lottery. His family had already been bribing the officers monthly to keep his name off the lottery list. His parents thought their son will get corrupted by bad company living outside the country, preferred to keep him close with them, and thus decided to bribe monthly to keep him off the list. Nope, that didn't work. What a waste of money. They said they spent around 1,000 USD per month as bribery money. It's a better use of money to spend $1,000 living a life in other Southeast Asian countries with more guarantee of avoiding conscription than spend enriching the officers with no guarantee to avoid conscription. He left the country. I see that and also decided to leave too. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made because a few months later, they started restricting both conscription-aged men and women from leaving at the airport. Now it's a 50-50 chance. Plus, I now have 24/7 electricity, unrestricted internet, and peace of mind. Centering and planning daily life around electricity blackouts sucked butt and was a hit to my productivity. I get more work done and learn faster than ever. Next story. An older 50s male coworker invited me and another young female coworker to hang out with his friend that had an arcade. We get there, and only when I walk into the empty house of a middle-aged man I never met did I realize just how weird this all was. The house was nearly empty, and I was like, okay, where are the games at? I was expecting like a public arcade that he owned, and we were brought to a house instead, and we were then directed to the basement. The entire time walking down that long, steep basement, I was just thinking there better be effing games down here, because if there isn't, there's going to be a problem. It was dark as F and I couldn't really see anything. Luckily, the unknown man turned on a light, and there were indeed arcade games. Pinball machines, DDR, those big Guitar Hero type games, all sorts of crap. No windows or doors, which made me question how or why they got all these huge games down a narrow set of stairs. It was kinda uncomfortable the entire time. We tried to play games, but the guys didn't and just watched us play, which was kinda unsettling. Anyway, after a bit of awkward playing, they offered that we should hang out upstairs. My friend suddenly says she has to leave and make it to some event. Oh, crap, we came in different cars. I need to come up with something so I'm not left alone. I ended up choking and saying that I'm going to that event too and have to follow her there. And that's how I crashed some kind of party at a synagogue. Next story. Both from around the time of the DC sniper spree, one me, one my mom. My mom had the actually scary one when the blue Caprice drove by her as she was walking through the neighborhood, and she could just tell something was off. Best guess is they were trying to find a way around the roadblocks. Thankfully, nothing happened, but it was a scary time to live in our area. Mine was thankfully not any actual danger. Some idiot pulled the fire alarm to get out of a test a few days after the middle school kid was shot. So we all head out to the football field and get into our groups. Then someone notices there are people with rifles on top of the bank building next door. The teachers know nothing about it. The administrators don't, so we all started running for the tree line. Local cops didn't know anything about them either. Turns out they were FBI HRT snipers. Next story. About 5 weeks ago, I was walking my foster dog early morning through the city. My area is pretty well lit, and there are usually other people walking around. Overall, a pretty safe area, but still not an ideal situation for a single girl in her 20s. My foster was sniffing some plants when this guy in all black comes running out of nowhere towards us. It's not uncommon for early morning runners, but he was beelining straight in our direction. He asked where a certain trail was a few blocks away. I started to explain how to get there when all of a sudden, my foster dog goes nuts. Prior to this, I had never heard her bark. She loves people, is incredibly sweet, but a little timid. Never displayed any aggression ever. This guy set her off. She was growling, lunging, and freaking out trying to get at him. Once I got over the initial shock of the change in her personality, my internal alarm bells started ringing as loud as her barking. It was a primal, "you are in danger" kind of feeling. So I turned and ran with her without saying another word to this guy. 2 hours later, I get a neighbor alert about a man in all black who attacked a woman the same exact time 2 blocks away. It was the same guy. I 100% believe my foster picked up on his energy before I did and saved my life. Next story. I, 37, went to a housewarming party with a friend who I'd been going out to dinner with pretty regularly. I had met him about 6 months before at a game store. He had turned me down twice on the idea of potentially becoming more than friends. The party was supposed to be just a few people he and I mutually knew and under 15 people. All needs, nothing too rambunctious. Red flags started being raised almost immediately. In reality, I think there were about 25 people or more who came in. Only 2 other girls were there. Mostly they were dock workers or people who worked at a freight distribution center. I noticed a skill saw on the kitchen counter. Said counter was actively being used to cook and the saw made space cramped. I noticed a large sledge and 3-foot metal stake taken into the backyard. There were mall ninja swords and knives spread into every room of the house. At one point, I saw 2 kitchen knives taken from the kitchen and put around in different rooms of the house, one being in the garage. A couple drug dealers showed up, one waving a bag of mushrooms as he walked in. Several people there had gang tattoos visible. I was told 3 times by 3 different people that it was unfortunate to have met you on a night like this. A man put an unopened Sprite into a beanie and put it in his back pocket. I was watching a game of beer pong in the garage, and though I had been sipping on only one beer, I had actually left it unfinished next to my friend in the kitchen while he was making food. It was brought out to me by that friend. I drank another quarter of it and I started feeling weird. I almost fell over just standing there. I threw about a quarter of the beer away when that happened and refused additional drinks. I went inside and while talking to my friend, The guy who put the soda in the beanie came into the kitchen and edged towards me repeatedly as I edged closer to my friend. I rotated halfway around the kitchen to get away from him. It's a bit fuzzy at this point, but about 5 or 10 minutes later, I asked my friend to drive me home. People immediately started offering me mushrooms and tequila shots and additional beers. I refused them all and edged to the door. Something like 5 or 6 people kept getting between me and the door before my friend was ready to go. When we left, the guy with the soda can still in his beanie followed us out, explaining he thought he had blocked us in. And no, he was parked in the driveway, wasn't blocking anyone. He still moved his car and I think followed us part of the way to my place. My friend asked if wanted food or to go back to his place and I insisted that I wanted to go home. I saw my friend get a text saying, "Other options," with a bunch of girls' names following. And after we pulled up to my house, he asked me to read this long email and talk to me for literally an hour before I wobbled to the door and got inside. I have reconstructed a lot of this from hazy memories and conversations with my friend and my 2 partners that I live with. My partners in the house mentioned I had talked to both of them separately, which I completely do not remember. I also fell asleep on the couch in my clothes with 1 shoe on. There was a lot of the night I don't remember, and I am guessing at a lot of the timing. I think I was almost human trafficked, to be honest, and I will never, ever leave a drink unattended again. One of the scariest nights of my life. Next story. Was out at a bar with the hubby back in our 20s. Went with his group of buddies. All was fine until it wasn't. It was like a weird shockwave went through the crowd and the energy just turned bad. Made him leave with me early and not 30 minutes later, a brawl broke out. Speakers tore off the walls, and one of his buddies got hit in the head and spent time in the ICU. This is one of many times my 6th sense has saved my butt. Next story. Been kiteboarding in Southeast Australia for over a decade and never worried about sharks even though I had some big swim-ins after breakages, or the lack of wind catching me out. One day I was lying back in the water with the kite above me, waiting out a lull, and out of nowhere a 6th sense started screaming at me I had to get going and get out of there. I had to work the kite hard to get moving and managed to get back to shore. I was really spooked even though I hadn't seen a fin. I'd seen quite a few sharks when scuba diving without too much concern, so feel I wasn't harboring an irrational fear or anything like that. I have never questioned what I did that day and it hasn't happened since. I just accepted it was some primordial warning mechanism that I just don't fully understand. Ooh, I relate a lot to this one, man. The ocean is a spot where I often have that gut instinct where maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm overthinking it, that I just have this image of being attacked and I skedaddle. And you know what? It saved me so far. Hopefully. Outside of that, there was that one organ harvesting thing I got out of, but that's a story for a different time. Next story. I was 17 in my last year of high school. I was in the choir and had early morning choir practice on Wednesday mornings. I lived in an apartment building 2 blocks from the school. Between the school and my apartment were houses with a back alley that led exactly from one to the other. One morning I was up walking by myself to choir practice in the pitch black winter morning. A car pulls up beside me. The man leans toward me. I am on the passage side door. He asks where a certain street is. I tell him it's 2 blocks over and I point. He then says, "Get in and show me." I back up, quickly say no, and I run to school. Next story. Guy in my town shot his girlfriend with a bow and arrow. I didn't know anything about him, just read about it on Facebook. So one day I'm walking with my friend and we're about to go down an alley. I stop and tell him something's wrong, I don't feel good about this. All I felt was this dark feeling that I hadn't ever felt. The kind where your hair sticks up. I try to shake it off and we're almost out and this guy is by a house working on a car. So we lock eyes. He looks up at me and down and I say hi. I grabbed my friend's arm and I pulled him fast into the best street. I found out the next day that it was the same guy who had shot his girlfriend. I never forgot that feeling. It was the most get the F out of here right now one I've ever had. I just knew he was evil. I could feel it from a mile away. Next story. My wife was in rehab and I was looking for someone to watch my kids while I worked. Obviously, I was going to vet them. I didn't want to just hand my kids over to anyone. So I got a recommendation from a friend to visit this girl and her family on the other side of town. I messaged her and we agreed to meet up at her place so that I could meet her husband and the kids. I arrived to their property, and she took me out around to the backyard, which I thought was odd, but whatever. We started to enter her house before I got to the front door, and I smelled this unstable smell of cat urine. I followed her inside and immediately saw an old man without a shirt and nothing but a pair of slim shorts on, laying on a bed in their living room. There were no lights in the house either, except for a few very small lamps. It was dark. I felt uncomfortable. She asked me to have a seat on her couch, so I did, brushing the newspapers out of the way to sit on the sofa that had all the stuffing chewed out of it. I knew immediately I wasn't going to be asking them to watch my children, but I had already gotten there, so I stayed for 45 minutes of awkward conversation while her husband played video games and exited as soon as possible. Next story. When I was 12, hanging out with two other girls my age, a trio of college-aged men came out of their apartment and invited us in. They wanted to play Halo and hang out, and we, being young and wary but stupid, took them up on the offer. They sat us down on their couch and crowded around their computer setting up a playlist. This went on long enough that we noticed bongs and other drug paraphernalia, as well as a pistol tucked into the waistband of one guy's jeans. The three of us girls looked at each other, giggling quietly in that nervous, "we're so effed" kind of way, and we just bolted. I didn't realize just how bad of a situation it really could have been until years later. Next story. I was 10 or 11 years old. We were staying at a hotel in Nashville. I was roaming by myself in the lobby area when I suddenly had a sense someone was following me. I remember walking onto a bridge of some kind. It must have been outside in front of the hotel. I stopped to look at nature, but really I think I was trying to figure out what was going on. I sense someone has also stopped a bit past me. I look over and see a much older man, scraggly. He gave me this terrifying smile, and everything in me just came alert in that moment. I turned and booked it back into the hotel lobby where I spotted a family of brothers I'd been chatting with in the pool the day before. They were sitting just hanging out, and I plopped right down with them. I remember telling them someone was following me, but that's about it. I never saw the guy again. I think about that moment a lot, and I wish I had told someone, but I never mentioned it to an adult. That man was a predator, though, through and through. Next story. I traveled to Southeast Asia alone when I was in my 20s. I took a bus from Thailand to Cambodia, which stopped at Phuket to switch buses and get our visas. We all unloaded our stuff, and me and another woman got slightly separated from our group. Someone waved to us to follow them and started down a dark alleyway. We both suddenly realized that our group was not there, looked at each other, and bolted. Phuket is known for human trafficking. Absolutely could have been a situation we could have very well not gotten out of. Next story. I was assessing a man for mental health reasons at a community mental health agency. He wasn't okay, so I was asking my standard questions to determine his mental status. He was saying odd things and then locked eyes on me. His eyes were fully black, so completely dilated. He was looking too intently at me for too long. He asked if I knew what it felt like to be shot. I said no, and asked if he experienced that, but he stayed silent, still looking at me. A shiver ran up my spine and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I had an instant flash of him lunging across the desk at me come into my mind, like it's what he was thinking of doing. I immediately left the room, saying I'd be right back. I ran to a coworker's office and locked us in, calling 911. I attempted to get him moved to the ER, but they sent PD and put him in a psych hold cell. I assessed him at the PD outside of the room. He then said to me that I ruined his day. He had planned to chop me up and bury me. I had one situation previous to the above where I saw only seconds before what bad thing was about to happen before it happened. I didn't listen to my instincts then, and I wish I had. I am grateful I listened to them this time. I think the human brain has some amazing ways of protecting the body, and I experienced it. I always listen to my instincts now and train my staff to do the same. Next story. I was at a truck stop or gas station by work, and a woman standing in the vestibule approached me. Now I'm used to being quiet enough to jump scare people when I try talking to them, so this was already weird to me. "Can you take me back to my hotel? My friend locked me out of our room. The stranger danger sirens were already going off in my head. I told her I didn't know where I'd be going. It's only like 4 miles away. Again, I told her I didn't really know the area since I commute from another town. It's okay, I'll give you directions. Time to switch gears. I wound up telling her that I didn't have any passenger space in my car. I drove a Chevy Spark at the time, but the whole thing felt sketchy AF. Next story. About 10 years ago, my husband and I went to a movie theater to see the movie Spotlight. The theater was approximately 1/3 full. About 20 to 30 minutes into the movie, a man walks into the theater who hadn't previously been in there. He was wearing a long coat, a hat, and a backpack. He proceeds to walk all the way to the top of the theater and takes off his backpack. He then quickly moves, some may say he ran, but like just a quick walk down the steps of the theater, and proceeds to go out the emergency exit that is next to the screen. I immediately stand up, turn to my husband and go, I need to leave. He goes, no, me too. We leave the theater. About 5 to 6 other couples follow us. We tell theater security. They stop the movie. They realize that not only had that guy went out the exit next to the screen, but he had wedged his wallet in the door so he could get back in. He said he forgot something outside and was just going to get it, would be right back. They checked his backpack and didn't find anything dangerous. The theater decided everything was cleared up and asked us all if we wanted to go back in or take free passes to come back later. We took the passes. Next story. More than a decade ago, my grandpa and me went for a holiday in the UK. Since it was our first time in a country where people drive on the left side of the road, he did not feel safe navigating through the traffic of a big, unfamiliar city, and I was too young to drive. So we decided to rely mostly on public transport during our stay in London. I can't really remember where exactly we were heading, but our plan was to use the subway to get there, like we had done the previous days. But this time, both of us felt uneasy for reasons that neither of us could explain. He suggested we walk instead, which was very much unlike him. He was always more on the lazy side. That's how I know he must have felt similar to what I was feeling. On our way through the city, several fire trucks and ambulances passed us with their horns blaring. It wasn't until watching the news the following day that we managed to make the connection. There had been a bombing at a subway station that was 2 stops away from where we would have boarded the train, and judging by the timing, I am fairly certain the train that got blown up was the same that we would have used. Next story. My 2 friends and I were roaming around a park at night in the not-so-great part of LA. We had a few drinks, a few smokes, and there was a stage in the park, so I started singing and playing on it. My 2 friends were laughing, and we were having a grand old time. Afterwards, we started across the park back towards our car. It was maybe 10 p.m. at this point, and very dark. We got to a point where we could go to our car or venture underneath the freeway through a tunnel to a newer part of the park. Now, I'm always aware of my surroundings, and had noticed a very sketchy guy who had slowly, but gradually, been following our every move. He watched me on the stage, and he followed us across the park in the distance, hiding behind the trees. We got to the tunnel, and my friend said, "Let's go here," and walked off without me or asking if I wanted to go. Within seconds, this dude popped out from behind a tree, the closest tree to the tunnel opening, and tried to follow them into the dark tunnel. I said, "Guys, I have to show you something. Let's go this way. I just got it delivered to my house. Come on, let's go." They stopped, turned around and said, okay. The guy slipped back behind the tree. When they got closer to me, I told them what was happening, and we all booked it pretty quickly to the car. I know for a fact if I wasn't on my toes, that guy would have robbed my friends in that tunnel, if not worse. I'm glad I was paying attention. Could have been a real bad event. Next story. I used to hike in this small wooded area in my town. I never had any issues going alone, spending the day reading on fallen trees, etc. One evening I went, did my hike, went to my reading spot, and I just started to feel uneasy, so I decided to leave. There was nothing out of the ordinary on my hike to my spot. However, on the hike back, someone had pinned very unsettling notes to the trees along the lines of, "I see you, I'm watching you, I'm going to take you." I also had brought my camera that day, and I took a few photos and booked it out of there. While I was hiking/running back, I started to hear someone following me. I made it to my car and I drove to the police station, who I sent out to have a look. Not sure what happened from there. Ugh, a lot of these are very unsettling. And it's all about trying to pick up on the right signs that something doesn't feel right. In this one, someone was leaving you actual signs that you should get out. But anyways, guys, that concludes our stories of scary and unsettling moments. Happy Halloween. I actually have no idea when this comes out, but if it's still the spooky season, congratulations. If not, well, these are all still terrifying regardless. And if you have any stories that you would like to share, please feel free to drop them down below. And as always, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.